Recording. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity. It's so nice to meet you. My name is Ryan. I run a podcast called Sinister Scripts with me and just a buddy who loved horror movies. It kind of started one day and evolved. But this is our first festival coverage. And honestly, um, your film took me so much by surprise. I
Yeah.
requested it and I was like, this looks so interesting. I'm going to watch it. And then I was like, this was almost like my so far I've watched six films. This was my hidden gem.
Yeah.
Literally, it was
Thank you.
outstanding, and I really enjoyed it. But yeah, I had a couple of questions I jotted down, try to make it quick because sometimes my thoughts are all over the place.
Sure,
But
sure.
the first thing, well, first things first, congratulations on your film being in Fantastic Fest. That's huge. That's awesome. Getting in front of a lot of eyes that people that are really passionate about film. So congratulations
Well,
for
thank
the
you so much. Appreciate it.
yeah.
Thank you.
So my first question for you is, so the Vial explores some really deep personal themes. You got
Mhm.
like polygamy, gender inequality, betrayal, while also trying to weave in those horror and those supernatural elements. So how did you kind of balance the cultural and social realities of these issues that we're talking about, but also that kind of genre storytelling between like horror, supernatural? If you could talk about that.
Yeah, sure. It wasn't easy. It was definitely tough. One of the things I think the because it's such a subject matter that I grew up with, and since childhood, I've seen it in my neighborhood, and I've seen it around family, and so it took me a while to really start writing. I had the idea almost 10 years ago,
Hmm.
and but it took me that time just to find an end for the movie and not disrespect the subject matter, but keep it fun and keep the horror, keep the genre in, because that's something I love doing as a filmmaker. So I think one of the first decisions that we made is when we by with building Amani is making sure that the main character, our hero, is the one the driving vehicle for our horror, and not create set pieces of horror and then try to put them together. So it's definitely everything has to link back to Amani, and everything has to make sense to her journey. So I think that's how I've balanced it out. And of course, one thing that I really wanted to do, because horror genre is such a new genre to the Arab world, for the audiences back home, I can't go full throttle horror. It's just something that they're not used to,
Okay.
and so I had to make sure that all right, because I trust me, I really wanted to, but I had to kind of I'm like okay, let's if this is like if horror is a new genre for the Arab audience and they're not used to it, let me start with the drama and let her drama and let the story connect with the population and culturally connect and from there use that as a vehicle and slowly introduce the horror pieces in the movie and that's the kind of attitude I took with making the Vow.
Okay, thank you. Awesome. I think even though you said you couldn't like jump full into like full
Yeah,
blown
yeah,
horror, you s- I think the ability to identify and connect with the characters, Amani
right,
and the others, really, I mean, I didn't expect to like have an emotional attachment to
yeah,
characters. A lot of
yeah.
times it's like, hey, let's put them out there, slashers. Okay, you're just like
True.
fodder, right? You know,
Mhm.
but this is like a very it's much more on a deeper level, and I really enjoyed being able to connect to the characters. And like you said, having the horror layered in. It's kind of back to with like more what you don't see versus what you do see,
True.
and it did have some very like very haunting elements to it. You know, I'm not gonna I want the folks to be out there to go out and watch the movie, so I'm not gonna give anything away. But definitely, I did you did an excellent job of
Thank you.
balancing being able to show the horror aspects, but also you know, like you said, something that maybe they're not ready for that we're trying to kind of slowly ease into the
Yes.
genre.
Yeah.
Excellent, excellent.
Thank you.
The second question I had for you was I did a little bit of research on the film, and it mentioned several times that you did a lot of interviews with women in the UAE to kind of shape the film's perspective and especially Amani's.
Yeah.
Were there any particular stories or insights that kind of stuck with you that directly influenced the character of Amani and how you kind of portrayed her journey in the film?
Oh yeah, multiple. So one of the things that through our research, and I spoke to a lot of women and even the kids, male and
Hmm.
female, that go through it. It's definitely a family trauma and not particularly just the wife's trauma. It
Sure.
actually it goes down to the sons, it goes down to the daughters. One of the things that I really found, in particular, that I actually put in the movie, is how the loss of identity in the first is devastating when they first hear the news. That
Sure.
devastation leads them to losing who they are and their voice and forgetting what is important and what is not. And that's what I took from meetings, from meeting a lot of the women that I sat in my country, just to kind of figure out, all right, so I wanted to bring that idea of not knowing who we are and being confused, and which it is traumatic to go through this. Like
Yeah.
someone you love that you expect to live for all of your life with gives you the ultimate, like what Khalid does is the ultimate betrayal, right?
Yeah.
That really confuses in real life, confuses a lot of the first one, which I totally understand. So that's a lot of the movies where the final sequence of that horror kind of dreamlike sequence.
Yes.
That for me was a resemblance. I'm like, hey, if I could go into the mind, what would it feel like? And that's, I use that as inspiration for that. And there
Yeah.
are other instances where, when she says in front of her sister, she's like, "Hey, if you were in my position, what would you do?" That was a real life conversation we were having in a group,
Yeah.
and it was a very interesting conversation because the woman that asked it comes from, she's older, and the sister in the movie says, "Well, did you see his face? Is he even worth it?" Which is,
Yeah.
in real life, that was a younger, from the younger generation that happened to him.
Sure.
So for them, it was interesting for me to see how women, a generation back, differs from a woman growing up today, like like let's say in mid 20s or early 30s.
Sure.
So that was reflected back into the character, into the scenes.
Yeah.
I definitely use a lot of the words, and even like when Khalid, when they're in the car and Khalid says, "Hey, you're lucky that I did this. I told you, and I didn't do it behind your back."
Yeah.
That was one of the big ones because I was so scared that it just seems like I'm a filmmaker just trying to make Khad look bad as an time. But this came from real life instances
Yeah.
where men do say that,
Yeah.
and some of this banter, like a lot of it is like throwing, like just like teasing each other. A lot of it is a tease,
Yeah.
but you hear it a lot. You hear the, "Hey, if you don't cook for me today, I'm marrying a second wife, right? You're gonna
Yeah.
have."
Yeah.
But again, it's a tease. But some men actually go forward with it,
Yeah.
and then with the people that, it's funny. I met a guy that actually did this and had that same answer that Khalid has. He's like, or the same perspective Khalid has. Like, well, you're lucky, like, because I told you, I'm not doing
Right.
it behind your back. Uh,
Right.
but he was betraying her the whole time. So
Yeah, that's
yeah,
so interesting because so much of horror is trauma based, and this is a trauma in your film, The Vial, that w- I hadn't seen before. This is
right.
just it's cultural, right? I mean, I'm U.S. stateside, so like this is a subject matter that I'm aware of and I hear of, but like seeing it lay out on film this way was
Yeah.
like holy shit! Like I didn't. That's not something that it almost makes the gears start turning, and I want to learn more and I want to see
Yeah.
more from you as a filmmaker, and I want to see how horror kind of evolves, within your
Mhm.
country. You say, like, are we
Well,
going to
thank
get to
you.
the point where we can show more horror? But it was very unique take on a trauma because a lot of, like I said, it's based in trauma. Horror is trauma, and I think
Mhm.
that it was an excellent job. So I really
Well, thank you.
enjoyed. I think it came across on film exactly how you anticipated it, and I really enjoyed it.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, yeah. So, kind of switching into more of like the craft and the
Sure.
genre specific questions. So much of horror thrives in like isolation. You're in a cabin, you're,
Mhm.
being stuck somewhere. Yet the Vial takes place kind of, its terror is like within like a household dynamic, which I think
Mhm.
you mentioned.
Mhm.
How did you kind of approach building the tension within such like an intimate domestic setting versus like an isolated place, like you said, like a cabin, or a spooky haunted house that they're going into? But this is a home, this is a place that's supposed to feel safe.
Exactly. No, great question. And this is what exactly what you said, that this is supposed to be safe. It's supposed to feel safe. And that's one of the first thing when I remember developing it, one of the first points I put this before we even had the first draft is like the idea of the house turning your safest zone. Like for Amani, she's a housewife, right?
Yes.
And that's for her, that's her domain, that's her safe zone, that's her comfort zone. And what if the introduction of a second wife is that's when the what if the home starts taking the other side, it starts
Yeah.
turning on her, and that's an idea I had early on before we even did the first draft, is that I would love to see that transition, that transition of the house where it becomes from the safe zone to a hostile zone. So that's something that was very deliberate, and then you see it in the end of the movie where it fully transforms, which is actually the opposite of what Amani goes through. Like that's in the end of the day, if you look at her journey, it goes from that, in a way you could look at it from a selfish to selfless, right?
Hmm.
In the beginning, and you see that a lot. And when I was doing a lot of research, because of the trauma and what happened and the betrayal, what happens is they forget what is the most important. And in Amani's case, it is her daughter.
Hmm.
Um, but because of her pride and because of no, this is my house. I've built it together. This is my domain, and she was fighting for the wrong things. And even for Khalid, like fighting for Khalid is that's from like in Amani's eye, that wasn't the right decision, right? The last decision was the right decision. Is finding yourself like finding your self worth, finding your voice, and your priority, which is your daughter. Over like even let's say in a scenario where and you see it a lot in our region where they accept it and they live forcefully. Like I mean, I'm not against polygamy, but if it's consent, if it's two adults consenting that they have consent between each other, they have an agreement. That's a very different scenario, and I don't knock that down. Of course, that's I support whatever like their decision is.
Their
But when
beliefs.
it
Yeah.
came to this, it's not consensual. It's
Right.
not. They didn't agree to it.
Right.
So for her, like you've seen a lot of women that just like fight through it because of their pride, which I totally understand. Like it's you live 15, 20 years in this relationship and this house that you've built. But that's the break that Amani takes in the end of the movie that makes her realize that this is more important than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's that. That's just it's terrifying to me. Like you said, like your safe zone becoming a hostile zone, and you even see the transition between his new wife, who
Yeah.
slowly wins over his daughter, and now she's like, "Oh my God, everyone's against me. I have nothing. I have no one." And then, but also seeing, I think, seeing her daughter, like you're like seeing your children as a point of strength and giving her strength and
Right.
something to fight for. I
Mhm.
think that was a really nice, beautiful, like touching point.
Mhm.
So yeah, that was I was very curious about that. Very interesting.
Thank you.
So your debut film, and I hope I'm saying it right, Zinzana,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't I haven't finished it. I started it because after this one, I was like, I have to go back and watch some of the other work. So it's a bit different feeling. It's much more like thriller energy. It's male dominated.
Yes.
Obvious. It's so. How did you like take that shift into like this more layered like domestic approach, focusing on a female heroine,
Sure.
and with the pacing and kind of how you evolved between those two films?
And it's been 10 years. I think
Yeah.
it's naturally you just grow. But one thing that happened in when I did Zanzana, Rather Cage, is it was a script from Black because I love the script. Ruckus and Lane, who wrote that script, really loved their writing and but again, it was a genre film for the love of filmmaking and for the love of the genre, right? But one
Hmm.
thing that happened in between that is as I rewatched the film that I love dearly, which is The Wailing, from Nahong
Hmm.
Jin, a Korean film.
Yes.
And that film for me, I remember watching it. I'm like, okay, this is what I want. This is what I need to do. This is the I want. I'm like, I need as an Emirati Arab filmmaker. I look at it, I'm like, this is I need to find my voice. I need to find my identity and my culture. This is, and I need to. If I'm doing a horror, I want something within. I want to be so true to the culture itself, and bring the story and open a window to the world of this part of our culture.
Yeah.
So I think the difference between like Raul the Cage or Zanzana and The Vow is this is way more personal. It's something that comes from an environment that I really grew up in, that I understand. I've seen it around me from family members, from friends, from even friends of friends. So it's something that growing up, it's very different today. It's not as much as in my father's generation, my grandfather's generation, you would see it way more,
Hmm.
and it was more common. Today, of course, UAE is just a very different, is in a different, in a good way, in a very different state where women have high positions in government and private sector, the CEOs and chairwomen. So you don't see it as much because there is this push for empowerment.
Hmm.
Um, but it's still good to we still see it from here and there. And so for me, it was important to really talk about this. And I have a father of two daughters. Like I always say, my wife always reminds me, is like, hey, sometimes I feel I go down making this movie. I went up, and it's been like 4 years making this movie. So my wife always remind me, it's like, hey, don't forget, 10 years, 15 years from now, your 6-year-old will watch this movie. And
Yeah.
what are you saying to them as a father? So
Yeah.
I think that was my one of my biggest push, and that like that kept me just kept on going with the edit, with the production, with that.
Yeah.
So
Well,
it's a
it
message as an Emirati to the next generation.
yeah, it bleeds through whenever you see films that are deeply personal to the filmmakers. It definitely bleeds through, and I feel like that's like you said, it's sort of pride. You want them to see the culture, you want them to see the things that are beautiful and good about it, but then you
Right.
also want to shine. It's a horror film, so you want to shine
Yes.
light on some of the darker sides, right?
Yes.
So I
Yes.
think it definitely came through, and I think it was very well done. I really
Thank
enjoyed
you.
it. I have one final question for you, and that was with casting. Casting is so critical.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
thought all of the actresses in this were just they did a wonderful job. So when a story that's driven by these like shifting power dynamics within a family, which is what we're seeing, what qualities were you looking for in Amari and Zara to make that kind of psychological tug of war
Right.
seem real and unsettling? Because it definitely came across. The one scene I remember, like, I know it wasn't between them directly, but the one scene where Zara was faced off with the bullies at
Yes.
school, and she just got in their face and just looked at him and didn't say anything. I was like, that made my skin crawl. So, like, what did
Right.
you do? What did you see in them as actors that you were like, that's it? They have a good dynamic, and it feels real.
Yeah, no, so it was a slow casting process for the movie. I mean, we've pushed the movie 3 months for
Hmm.
us to really get the cast, and our industry isn't big. It's growing. So it's hard, and it's hard to really find the right cast at the right time. And so for what happened, it all started with Badur. I went when a friend of mine called me to attend in charge of one of the Emirates a
Hmm.
theater. We have a theater festival, and I went in. The first show I saw was Badur. She was in it, and she was the lead, and my jaws dropped. I'm like, this energy that I felt from her, and I just knew that it was her. And then I sent her the script. And then we met, and she's like, "Oh, it took me 5 times reading this the script." And I'm sitting there, I'm like, "Oh, is it that bad?" I'm
Right.
nervous. I'm like, "What?" It's like, "No, no, no." It's like, I'm like, it's too close to home. It's so personal, and it was hard for me to finish it. And I knew at that moment, I'm like, she's the right person because she understands this. And as a director, as a male director, I knew that I needed that voice. I really needed
Yeah.
Amani, someone that knows it inside out.
Hmm.
So that was the Amani journey. So I think once we got Badur, things started falling to like the puzzle started like falling to
Yeah.
places. Um, and then, of course, with Sarah, Sarah's a really good writer, well known in Saudi Arabia. I've seen her shows. I've been following it. She writes, and then she also acts and leads her
Okay.
shows. So once I saw her series, I knew exactly. I mean, she has the kind of face you put the camera on, and you don't know how it reads. And I love that idea. I love that she had that energy to her,
Yeah.
and sometimes like I remember one of the tests we did early on was just put a camera and I'm like, hey, just look at the camera, just like don't do
Hmm.
anything. And I could see that like you don't know what she thinks and what she. So when I saw um um when I saw that from her, I knew that she would be the right person for to play Zahra. And Iman, who's the daughter, was someone I've worked with before, and honestly, she's so gifted. No previous training. She didn't go to acting school. She didn't do, but once the camera's on her, she just switches on, and
Yeah.
I think God blessed her. Like he just touched her, and she just knows where the camera is and how to bring out her emotions. And I was very lucky,
That's a
extremely
gift.
lucky.
That's a gift. That's a gift. I know there was a few scenes where with Zara, it was almost as if she was looking at the camera, and as the lighting or the shadows
Yeah.
changed and like her face, it almost she didn't have to do anything. It's almost like her demeanor and what
Right.
you were portraying came across differently. She went from being inviting to like
Yes. Yes.
evil, and it was like I was like, wow, like she didn't do anything. She's just like she's a very beautiful woman, but
Yeah.
like watching this transition, almost it kind of reminded me of like the Evil Dead movies. I mean,
Right.
that's on a much different like grander scale from like
Right.
a horror, but just the idea to be like completely like calm talking, and then they're possessed, and then they're like
Yes.
evil and mean, and so I was like, wow,
This,
this is really
thank you.
it was perfect. It was perfect.
Thank you so
So
much.
but those are the questions I had for you. Just wanted to jump on here. I had a few. I was curious. I wanted to come on here because I enjoyed the film so much, and I went into it completely blind and didn't have expectations. A lot of these other films, I'm like, oh, it's a shark movie. It's this, it's that, and I came in and I was like, you know what? This looks like something totally unique, and
Yeah.
it surpassed everything that I thought. And so I was like, I have to come on here and talk to you. So
Well, thank you, man. Appreciate
I
it.
appreciate you taking the time and answering a few of my questions. Yeah, I would love to have you on the podcast sometime to, just to do that additional talk. Maybe we can arrange that sometime.
Sure.
I'm interested, I'm excited to see where film takes you.
Mhm.
And as you said, your industry there is small, so I'm interested to see the growth. And so I will be following you, and I really appreciate and have a great time at Fantastic Fest. I hope you get lots of good feedback, and I hope you are able to, really enjoy your time there.
Well, thanks, Ryan. Appreciate it. Nice meeting
Thank
you.
you, Majid. I
Bye.
appreciate it. You have a great time and have a great day.
Bye.